Hey, welcome back to Diabolic Shrimp, the least professional talk show on the internet. I'm your host, bestselling author and comic creator Josh Grant. And today we have a very special show. We have Patricia Parker on the show. She is just a wonderful person, wonderful heart. Has you can hear her laughing down below. He has excellent literature. The Abode. We're going to talk all about the Abode today and talk all about her journey into becoming an author. And before we get into her, I just wanted to share a couple of our highlighted books from Diabolic Shrimp. The first one out is Shot to the Heart, A Missing Daughter, A Desperate Father, A Kidnapper with No Identity. Shot to the Heart is the fourth action-packed book in the Fighting Detective series from popular crime author Blair Denholm, guaranteed to keep you turning the pages into the night. So I've read that series, an excellent detective series if you like gritty detective series. And then next up on our list is These Words Believe in Ghosts. In this collection of poetry, Jamie Bollhauer investigates the powerful connection of the past to the life we experience every day.
Ooh.
The past is an emotional ghost that he brings to light in these works. Fantastic poet, Jamie is, and also a wonderful heart. And last up, we have The Breeze, the Walker, and The Treeborn. The Breeze, a Mysterian, searches for a lost star cruiser. The Walker, a song poet, chases after her Shanghai lover. The Treeborn, a fugitive, seeks freedom from the Empire and a devil, from Dr. A.R. Davis, also an excellent sci-fi fantasy writer. I reviewed all these authors. I've gotten a chance to check them out. Now, Patricia is our guest today. I know several of you are tuning in live. If you're watching this live, please, over the live chat, you are more than welcome to put Patricia on the hot seat. We'll get her some questions. Questions and comments will bring you up here. We love being interactive on Diabolic Shrimp. If you stumble upon this channel, I love to interview interesting and famous people from around the world. If you want to be part of that journey, hit that subscribe button down below. So just a bit about Patricia, and we'll bring her on. Patricia believes deeply in the saying, "It's never too late." Patricia always wanted to visit other worlds. She began reading voraciously as a child and have never stopped. In books, she gained entry into strange realms where all manner of creatures lived, as well as wizards, witches, magicians, and of course, ordinary people experiencing extraordinary events. She finally created a world of her own in The Abode, her first book. That process showed her that the deepest, most satisfying access to realms of fantasy came along when she began to write about the places and beings from her imagination. As she wrote, the characters in the story took over and taught her about their worlds. As Patricia wrote this, she was deeply involved in another new adventure, a sequel to The Abode, which she hopes you'll stay with her. And I'm excited to talk all about The Abode to you, but let's bring on Patricia. She's been in the wings for a bit. Patricia, welcome to Diabolic Shrimp.
Thank you, Josh.
It is so great to have you back on the show. If you're tuning in, Patricia has been on once before for one of our Monday tartar sauces. That's the last Monday of the month where we talk about a different subject. So, but today we get to talk all about you, all about your book. And I think a great way to introduce somebody is through a bit of show and tell. Did you bring us anything for show and tell?
Why? What a coincidence. Yes, I did, Josh.
Yes, this is entirely unscripted, this part, right?
Here is The Abode. Okay, there it is. It has.
Oh, I love that cover. Oh, you were about to bring up a new cover. Yeah,
it's a new cover. The first cover was fine. Then I made one, and a professional person, writer helper, said, "We're gonna have to dump that one you made."
I liked the old cover too, though. But this is a really cool cover.
This is a good one. And about this cover, the first of all, Amazon now has hardcover books. Did you know that? This is
I just discovered that. I was like,
yeah. Anyway, I want to make a shout out to something called getcovers.com. They're a Ukrainian company, and they're still functional, and they have an agreement with something called depositphotos.com. So where you can pick out a photo, have Get Covers change it for you, and make it look however you want it to look. And the whole process, including the back cover, cost me $35.
Nice, nice, and that's great for a cover for anyone just getting into business. We have a lot of
Yes.
new writers that get in on the business here, and the cover is probably going to be one of your most expensive parts unless you know how to graphic design yourself. And I've learned through doing Comic World, but only just recently. It's like my covers used to cost buku amounts, so that is a great deal. And I love also very timely right now here in
Yes.
2022. Thank you for supporting Ukraine. Diabolic Shrimp supports all sorts of great causes. One of those was also like UNICEF and the International Rescue Committee, which helps out a lot of those refugees as well. And so that's great of you to support that as well. So, but yeah, so that looks like a great cover, and we're going to talk all about the Abode, but let's take a moment and see how you got there though to this point of writing a book, because I love just seeing writers' journeys. We writers are characters ourselves in a way, and so it's nice to see like your journey into writing, because you published like later on. It's a fact that you pointed out yourself and that you're proud of, and I'm proud of you. I think that's great. And so let's talk about how you got there. So going back a bit, you kind of ran the gauntlet, going through like 3 colleges over the course of like 17 years, right? And I feel you there, because I went back to college after I used to be an actor, and I went back to college to become a
Oh,
teacher, and but I was there
that's
for like
good.
6 years even after having to go back and get a degree. And so, but what were some of the degrees you tried out over the years, and why did you feel like they didn't stick with you? Or
Uh, I was an honor student in high school, and then I went to college, and I didn't really know what I was going for.
that's why everyone goes to college, right? Yeah, it's like, I don't know what I'm doing in my
Because
life, so I'm
everybody
just
in
gonna
my
go
high
to
school
college.
went to college, and I was expected to go to college, so
Yeah.
I did. 1966, which probably sounds like very ancient history to some of you listening. Anyway, so I picked the wrong college. I went for a year. I was miserable. I transferred to the University of Wisconsin the next year, 67, which is in Madison, which is a wonderful place. And, but the combination of my own immaturity and the fact that the Vietnam War was raging, and Madison, Wisconsin was was the Berkeley of the Midwest.
Uh-huh.
So I quickly got caught up in Ho Chi Minh and so forth, and went on a lot of marches and so forth. And school kind of interfered with that. I was, I came, I started at Miami University in Ohio as a drama major. And then I came to Wisconsin after having had surgery for the first time that summer. So I thought I'd become a nurse. Well, I quickly discovered that no.
I was like, that was me
No,
for I don't do blood, so I was like,
no.
nah, I'm good with that too.
Chemistry, just chemistry 101 through me.
Oh yes, organic
So,
chemistry. Mm.
never got there. So I dropped out again. Well, for the first time, I actually dropped out, and I came back a few times, trying to remember what I thought I was going to major in. But anyway, finally, when I was living in San Francisco and working as a teacher's aide for 65 cents an hour or whatever it was more than that, but I was very, very broke.
I don't think it's actually gone up since then. Actually, I think it's about the same amount actually nowadays for teachers. I used to be a teacher, so
This was teacher aid money, which is not very good still. And I was walking to work one day at a school for difficult kids, let's say, to an after school program. And I thought, this is stupid. I should just get a degree in this. So I went back to San Francisco State, and I, in fact, did get a bilingual English-Spanish degree, finally. And then I started teaching and realized I loved the kids, but I'm an impatient person by nature, and I have a temper. Anyone that knows me knows that. And that's not a good recipe for a teacher.
Also, that makes a perfect teacher. That's how I was too. I'm like, put your name on your paper.
Quiet, stop it. So
Well, I was like, Well, I definitely connect with you on that journey too. I left the field of acting, right, and I just
Yeah.
had a night where I needed something different, less me focused, more people focused, and had no idea what I wanted to do, and I was successful at acting, so it was like scary to throw that
Oh,
away. But
oh.
I was like, well, I was like, my mom was a teacher. Maybe I could be a teacher. And I went back for school for that. But I'm like, I'm going out there, and I worked with difficult kiddos too. I worked out in gangland and worked with gang
Oh.
families and kiddos, kind of school of hard knocks kind of thing, and worked out with all of them. And but I was going out there originally with my, ooh, I can like do a play with them. And I went out there and got I learned it the tough way, and then got my degree in that, and did that for a bit. So, and these things, like these experiences, change you. And I love your journey because you talk about that idea of like it's never too late, and I definitely connect with you on that philosophy. Because early on in life I've had some difficult things, and I've had some success, and I threw that away for other careers, and I learned through that. I guess it's like you're never trapped, and I see that in you, Patricia, in that sense of like you're never trapped in one thing or another. Sometimes you have to be in a place for a bit, but getting to do that. So what did you kind of take away from that? I guess those college years, and then we're going to get into like elementary teaching, or because you were an elementary teacher for a bit, and
Yes.
but those college years of like trying those different things out, and maybe even like you got out there and did some of that protesting and stuff too. It's like how did those experiences change you, and maybe like how did they work their way into you writing all these years later?
I would say that the biggest change for me in my life, I grew up in a very straight-laced Republican suburb of New York City in New Jersey.
Uh-huh.
My parents were Republicans. I never really gave it a lot of thought. Politically, I wasn't sophisticated at all. I'm still not. But in Madison, Wisconsin, during the Vietnam War, those experiences, going out on the street with others to protest this awful war, and then Cambodia and so forth, changed me forever. I have been an obnoxious lefty ever since, and am proud of it.
I was about
And
to say you're on the left side of the screen, but mine's all backwards
I'm
sometimes.
on
So
the right.
I'm pretty sure you're on the right side of the screen now. You're on the far right now. No,
Yeah,
not
I'm
really,
on the
not
far
really.
right, the alt right. Yeah. So anyway, so I would say that school. So anyway, that then I began later working when I was in San Francisco, working with all kinds of kids, um, autistic children, children with Down syndrome, um, and so that kind of how do I put this? That taught me a great deal about myself and what I could and could not handle, and about the fact that there are so many kinds of people in the world, and there are from childhood on, extremely. I still remember some of those kids very, very well. The little boy, autistic young man who used to, when I came into the room every morning, he'd come over and scratch my hands, and
Mhm.
so I had to, but I I learned from that he actually was trying to be affectionate. He just didn't know how. So I learned a lot.
Yeah, it's like a sensory thing. And I used to have a kiddo with autism. She would try and scratch my hair when you weren't looking. You had to be kind of quick. And I laughed because my hair was super short back then. I was like, "Sorry, kid, you ain't gonna get it," because she liked to pull hair, and it was just kind of part of her sensory experience. And so, uh,
So
but well, yeah. So you draw that. So all right. Well, well, I guess let's jump ahead just a little bit. So
yeah.
because you were an elementary teacher for a bit, like any just for the fun of it, because I used to be a teacher, like any is there a goofy story that stands out, that a goofy thing that a kid did? And I'm putting you on the spot, so if you
Yeah,
don't
I
got one, we
can't
can move on.
right now. I can't think of anything.
They all do weird stuff, so
They all. Sorry, if I knew that question was coming, I would have
Oh,
figured.
don't you? Well, you can come back to it later. So let's talk. Well, let's jump onto writing bit now. So
Okay, here's what
so
happened.
oh, I was gonna say oh,
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
no, go.
I was gonna say, so let's jump onto the writing bit here. It's like you went on to get something published in Highlights magazine, which is really hard to do. And I mean, it's like it's hard to get a publisher to publish you. And magazine publishing, weirdly, it used to be like the way for authors to kind of get in. Nowadays, it's like it's almost the opposite. It's like you kind of have to be an established author to even get into a magazine sometimes, and depending on the magazine. But like, so Highlights magazine is a bigger one. So tell us a bit about that experience. Like what did you publish, and like what did that feel like when you got something published out in the magazine?
Let me say first that I freelance I was a freelance writer for many years.
Yeah, you said about like 20 years or so, right?
Yeah, including the part with Highlights, but I had written only on assignment, which was, I learned everything I could about writing. And my husband, Michael Derman, has always been my first reader and my best editor, which is such a gift to have that in-house. So
everyone wants a husband that nitpicks their work. Right? No, just joking.
When I first started out, he would say, he was always positive. Well, this is okay, but what is it about?
So I was gonna say editors have to be that way, so
anyway,
I'm sure that goes over well, then after he's torn your book apart, like, let's go have dinner now.
He never tore anything apart. I have to say, but he was very careful and taught me a whole lot about through lines and verbs, and don't use adverbs unless you really have to, really. And anyway, so then I thought, well, I'll try writing for children. Well, I had an idea about a children's story, and I had sent other things to Highlights and been rejected. I think no one gets into Highlights without being rejected a bunch of times.
Yeah, if you go with traditional publishers, that's part of it. You got to go over the rejections. I always say you climb to success over your own dead body, over the corpses of dead books.
True. And anyway, finally, they were having a contest, and I had this idea. So I sent them a story called "My Name is Patty Joe, and No One Ever Listens to Me," which is very personal. And I feel, this little girl who was always yelling at everybody, and so they wouldn't listen. And she finally figured out, connection. You yell at people, they're not going to listen to you. Now, I haven't really learned that lesson in life.
I was going to say, on this show, I just yell at all my guests, and they have to listen to me. I'm sorry.
I haven't really learned that lesson in life, but I did write this story for the contest, and it didn't win, but I got a note from one of their managing editors that said, "Can you get this down to 500 words?" And I said, yeah. So I sent it back, cut down. They changed the name to "No One Ever Listens to Me," and then they published it.
Nice. Well, that's so impressive too, that you were able to cut it down to 500 words, because I was like,
I wasn't going to let that go by without trying.
Yeah. Well, I just give you such kudos, because for me, it's like it's such, for all of us writers, that's your heart, and that's why it's good to have an editor sometimes, because it's like you sometimes have to have someone tell you that's got to go, because it's your heart and you're cutting it away, and it's like, and so good on you for getting in there and stepping out and trying that. I'm curious from you though, it's like, after freelancing for so long, did you enjoy working with a traditional publisher for that bit that you did?
Yes, yes. Oh, very much. I went to a retreat of Highlights. They have wonderful retreats. You get your own little cabin.
Nice.
Yeah. In Honesdale, Pennsylvania. That's where they're located, which isn't anywhere, but I live in Pennsylvania, so I could get there. Oh yeah. And then they did take a couple of other pieces. Wilma Rudolph, who was a Olympic runner, I wrote a piece on her, and wrote something else that I can't think of right now, but I had 3 feature pieces published in Highlights before I stopped, and several more rejected before I decided to try to write a book. And when I started the Abode, I was actually working on something for another writers contest, which I have given up doing. I don't enter those anymore. But the Abode was sort of a joke at first. And I didn't intend for it to be anything much. But again, that editor guy who lives here said, you got something here, but you should, take it more seriously. And so for years, I came and went from writing the Abode. Took me for
It's serious. It's definitely serious when you're working on it for years.
if
It's like
I was
toiling.
well, and months would go by when I wouldn't get to it. I was not a committed writer yet of book length fiction. So I did a lot of substitute teaching in those times here in Pennsylvania, and also worked as an editor for the local university's alumni magazine. I was the class notes editor. I don't know if you get a college alumni magazine, anybody, but
I do, and they won't let me be in it. I keep writing to them and be like, "Hey, I do all this. I do YouTube. I'm a best-selling author," and they're
what
always just like, they won't let me be in my own college magazine. Thanks a
what
lot,
college what college is that?
UNC Colorado.
Uh, anyway, um,
I don't mean to call them out. I had a wonderful
no,
university. I really enjoyed them, but it's just like I'm always just like, "Hey, can I be in your thing? I have a talk show and everything."
I don't know why they
So
wouldn't put that on the front page. But anyway, I if any of you or you, Joshua, do you prefer to be called Josh or Joshua?
either way works for me, but I usually go by
Okay,
Josh.
Josh. If you get class notes, who got married, who had a baby,
Hmm.
who in the older sections it was who had lunch with whom, um, older graduating classes. Every comma, every period, every class year. I once got somebody's class year wrong, and they just
They'll
right.
let you
I
know it.
didn't
Yep.
write it then.
I have a friend who is a director at a big news channel in Denver and Denver, Colorado, and same kind of thing. Any little thing off on the website there, and they have to publish stuff like every day, like online, and it's just like every little thing. It's like they'll get angry phone calls. That's what we
Exactly.
live for as writers too, right?
Yeah.
We want those reviews that let you know that you missed a comma.
Well, yeah. So I lasted at that job. It was a part-time job, and I could do it while raising small children. And the university is right up the street, so it was not difficult to do it, but it was tedious. And I lasted for 3 years, which was 3 times as long as the previous several class notes editors for Bucknell's
See,
magazine.
you have patience, right? You said you were impatient, right? That sounds patient to me.
Well, I had to be if I wanted the job, and I did. And again, I learned a great deal. There was a wonderful woman there who taught me to say, instead of over 300 gallons, more than 300 gallons. All kinds of nitpicky things I learned at
I
that
always thought
job.
it was like 300 gallons or most 300
Oh, the
gallons. No.
most are 300
More
or
300
yeah,
gallons.
yeah,
So
300.
well, like, well, let's go back to real quick. Let's just back up for just a second. Like, it's like, so you went from highlights, right? It's like, and then going into this, but it's like you went from highlights doing like these kind of shorter pieces that they had you cut down. What was it like taking this smaller piece, like the Abode, and then expanding on it? Like, was that I mean, it took you a bit to do it, but it's like, what was the challenge and what was the excitement of doing that? Because writing could be a very exciting and challenging experience at the same time, where I'm having the opposite. I wrote a brick of a book called The Fifth Ascendant, and it's like a paperweight. It's like 700 something pages, and I loved it, and my heart is in that book. But I'm turning it now into a comic, so I'm going the opposite direction
Yeah,
and trying to learn how to cut things out of this book that I love and this world I love. And because comics, you have to cut it down to like, pictures, and you can sometimes say a lot in a picture, but a lot of the dialogue you have to kind of like really clean up a lot. And so I'm having the opposite where I'm having to shrink it down. What was your experience going the different direction where you took this smaller thing and had to expand on it? What was the cool part of that, and what was the challenge of that?
the challenge was, and the reason it took me so long, well, many reasons, but one of the main reasons is that I didn't know where I was going. I didn't have an outline. I knew that there would be dragons. I knew there would be strong female protagonists, and that's about it. I knew I wanted
That,
all
that
of
sounds like my graduation speech from my high school. In your life, there will be dragons and strong female protagonists. I'm like, all right, cool.
but I didn't know where I was going. And so I had to keep going back and changing and going back and changing and then forgetting where I was and going back and linking things up. And it finally came out as a nice book, a pretty good book. But the second book I've written too. And for your listeners of all ages, the Abode. And I also tried. Well, let me not get too far ahead of myself. The second time I wrote a book.
Yeah, definitely show them off. Oh, by the way, yeah, for everyone watching, by the way, Patricia's books are down there in the description below, as well as links to our highlight books from earlier. So definitely check out all Patricia's books in her website. It's in the link in the description below. Go on, Patricia. I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. The Ice Dragon's Daughter. I knew this time. I knew where I was going. I didn't know what was necessarily going to happen along the way, but in both cases, it's so surprising how the characters write the book, don't you think?
So I like, well, and that's something I was going to dive into with you. I was curious because it's like I come up with all these weird little rules when I'm writing a book. So it's like when I wrote my horror books, like Pandora and Jericho, I had my rule of like, it's like female protagonist, male protagonist, and we jump back and forth between them each chapter. So it was more like a strategy for me of like, how do I get them from point A to point B, but while jumping back and forth and moving the story forward. Whereas like the Fifth Ascendant, that was definitely one where the characters wrote that book, where it's like Pandora, I think I had a pretty solid roadmap and I had some aha moments on the way, versus like the Fifth Ascendant was my second book I wrote. And that was very much from my heart. But I started with just like, I want this world, and I started building the world, but then the world started building itself, and then the characters started building themselves, and I turned every character into having history, and it became this like conglomerate thing, and I loved it, and it just kind of it definitely wrote itself. It was like long, and it took like 2 months to write that, and like
only 2 months.
Well, and that I was like possessed by it. I never written anything that fast. It usually takes me a year or two, and so, but for you, it's like, yeah. So you said like these characters kind of wrote it in. So how did that happen with like you started with like what did you start with, by the way? Like you had this smaller story and then expanded into the Abode. So like what was kind of the premise?
I don't even remember the smaller story anymore. It was a long time ago that all began, because it took me so long to write the book. But I do remember the moment when there's a family in the Abode of reformed pirates. There's a father and a mother and their son, Sam is the hero of the second book. And they did sort of they made their living like Robin Hood. They would go raid pirate ships when all the pirates were sleeping, steal back the stuff the pirates had stolen and return it to the people they'd stolen it from, or whomever. And so they lived
again. That was kind of my high school graduation speech. That was where I started life, you know.
So one day, this family was on their boat called the Silence, and this guy sailed up, who turned out to be the uncle of Sam, and he was still a working pirate, a bad guy. And I didn't know he was even alive. I didn't know there was such a person. And he sailed up on his ship, and he jumped onto their ship. And the father, Sam's father, they had a sword fight because they didn't like each other. Anyway, Angel, his name was Angel. And that character. And that's what I mean by sometimes the books write themselves. I didn't know.
And I love that, because
yeah.
I was like, I definitely connect with you there again on like Fifth Ascendant. I had this character that was literally a throwaway character. He was one of the kids' uncles, and he was just like there to move the plot forward and like literally like the first 2 chapters. And then I threw him away, and then like halfway through the book, it's like I was like, he just kind of came back, and it was kind of like the thing, right? And he became one of my favorite characters, and he became a huge part of it. And I just loved, like, it was like how sometimes books can do that. They like weave themselves, and that's when you know you have a story. You just have to write. And so you publish. So moving forward now, it's like you end up publishing your first book, The Abode. You said at 69 years old, and then your second book at 73. And what an accomplishment anytime somebody gets a book out, right? And so like, and these books have been forming for a good long time. So before you decided to get them published, like what was your feeling when you finally got your book out there, and what kind of finally made you look at it and say, this is ready to publish?
Well, first I tried to publish traditionally, because self-published books, when I started trying to do that, were still sort of, oh, self-published, oh, yeah. Now, people like Stephen King are self-publishing, so it's much more respectable now. So I tried, and that did not work out, and I realized I'm in my late 60s. If I keep trying to do this traditionally, I'll be dead before I get published, because first you got to get an agent. Then the agent has to sell your book to somebody, and then they have to do all the blah, blah, blah to put it together, and that takes years. So I thought I'll try this self-publishing thing, and I did that through Amazon and their self-publishing stuff, which I have to say is pretty good. Amazon is a behemoth, we know that, but it is the place. If you want to sell your books, that's the place.
I was like, on that publishing wing, they definitely have been an enabling device, I would call it, like an enabler for authors like myself. I was very much in the same boat. I was trying to go through traditional publishers and getting the rejections, and through agents. The agents is the way to go. They're the gatekeepers and everything. And I knew that from my theater days too. It's the same thing in theater. And but I kind of had an epiphany one night. I never wanted to self-publish because, like you said, it used to be kind of it was very much a gamble, self-publishing. It wasn't well looked upon, and it was like, and you had to buy everything up front and try and sell it, and it was a gamble whether you could do that. Nowadays, it's the opposite. It's where it's all at. I love being an indie publisher, and but it's interesting because we now have this weird symbiotic relationship now, almost, with like traditional publishing and self-publishing. It's kind of a weird thing going. So Andrea Hintz, by the way, Andrea Hintz, wonderful support of other authors. I always shout out Andrea, but a very wonderful support.
Thank you, Andrea. Look at that.
So yeah, and Andrea Hintz is saying, I love your book cover, and a pirate. And again, that book cover costs Patricia like $35. Working with a Ukrainian publisher. What was the name of that one again, Patricia? The book cover.
One word, getcovers.com.
So one word. So getcovers.com. And so, and Andrea also has a pirate series that she's actually going to reproduce, actually called Tesoro. And it says, and a pirate ship called the Silence. Sounds cool. Definitely going to pick this one up.
There you go.
So Andrea, always a wonderful support for anyone watching. Great support of other authors as well. So, but Patricia, so going back to it, so and let's dive into the Abode here in a second. Again, for everyone just tuning in, if you want to throw out some comments or questions over in the live chat, we love being interactive with our audience here. We love shouting you out as well. But before we dive entirely into the Abode, which is down in the description below, you're a believer in the saying, "It's never too late," and I love that. Again, I connect with you on that. I always say you're never trapped in life. Even if you have to be in a place for a little bit, you're never trapped there. And so never believe that you're trapped. But and you say it's never too late. So tell us a bit about that mantra and why you believe that. And we've been kind of talking about it a bit, but tell us a bit about that. And then we're going to dive all into the Abode. I'm going to share some lines from that.
Oh, cool. Well, let's see. Took me 17 years to graduate from college. In and out, in and out, in and out. And I finally did.
Also, these days, that's the standard college experience.
I guess. But everybody else, well, not everybody, but a lot of people that I knew were, starting these great careers and so forth. But while I was in San Francisco, I also dipped into acting. I had been an actress in high school, and so I went over to a theater in the Castro district of San Francisco to take a class in improv. And there was this adorable guy there with this, what I call a Jewish afro, and great body and really cute. And I got to the class and I said, "Am I too early?" And he said, "Yeah, you really are. You should leave." So that is my husband now.
I was gonna say, it better be your husband or your editor might really tear your books apart coming up here.
Well, anyway, that's a story he knows I'll tell. So I've told it so many times. But anyway, Michael, where was that going? Oh, so Michael is a very nice man, very smart and well-read and gentle and sweet. I couldn't deal with that. I had to be, and girls out there, you'll know, I had to be mistreated a few more years. So we stayed in touch, and after we broke off our relationship, we stayed in touch, and 7 years later, he had moved back to this little town in Pennsylvania where we now live, where he went to school, and I had resisted moving there because I lived in San Francisco, where people want to live, or they used to when it was.
It's cold there. I got to visit
Yeah,
recently, and I think it's cold.
Mark Twain actually has a quote. Do you know that? Coldest winter I ever had was a summer in San Francisco.
Yep.
True. Anyway, so Michael and I got together here in 1985. I moved here in 1985, and I was 39 when we had our first child. So there's another never too late. And then I was 44 when we had our second child. So I don't recommend it. But if you haven't found your soulmate yet and you're getting up there, it can happen.
We can just leave it at I don't recommend having children. I work with children all the time, and so I love working with kids, but they're crazy. So I don't recommend it.
They are crazy and they're hard, but we have two wonderful sons who are grown men now, and one of them.
I was like, Patricia has to say that because her grandkiddos might be tuning in. So
That's one of my older son, and his amazing wife have two little girls. And if you're here, Sloan and Esme, hi, it's Grandma. So I became a grandmother about the same time that the Abode was published, because she's 6 now, so maybe a little before that. But anyway, twice, and so it's
wow,
never.
I was like, that's quite the year of change right there. It's like stepping into your own published book and having grandkiddos at the same time. I'm
the poster girl for It's Never Too Late.
I love that, and I love that's where Diabolic Shrimp is built on a pillar of being genuine, and I just love connecting with people that have that beautiful message for people that I totally believe myself. It is never too late, and never too late to step out and risk it and try something new, right? And that's been my life experience as well. So let's dive all into the Abode, because I want to share a little bit of your work, and we're going to have a bunch of questions on the Abode for anyone that hasn't checked it out. Awesome book, wonderful fantasy book. Yeah, hold that cover up. We're all about shameless self-promotion here, so
that's the whole,
get it out there.
Whole idea, yeah.
And so,
self-promotion. And it's wrong side. I'm backwards here. There. That's
yeah. Well, yeah. You're supposed to be on the left. I thought. Remember, that's what we talked about there earlier.
Anyway, here it is.
Yeah. So here, let's get the first lines of the book here just a bit. So and we got pirates, we got dragons, we got creatures. So it's like it's such a cool book series. So Fell crouched on the deck, her eyes just above the top of the Silence's railing, watching the pirate ship anchored nearby. She tried to stop trembling. After waiting so longer this night, she finally been given the chance to help. Fell hoped she wouldn't disappoint the others. And then the murders began. No. And so I always like start with that. So tell us about Fell. Tell us about the Silence in general, actually. Let's just talk about the whole Abode. It's called the Wing Song series. So give us kind of the brief overview, like the general overview of what's going on in that.
Which part?
Oh, just in general, like so like the Abode and the Wing Song series, like just give us like the general overview of like just generally what's the series about.
Okay. In the first book, it's about and I don't want to give it away because
that's what I'm saying. Just give us like the meat and potatoes sort of.
Yeah. It's a book about being children who are being oppressed and they have one of them, well, fell from the first chapter, has left that awful place called the Abode, and she suddenly has reason to return. She returns and then begins a fight for freedom that pretty much takes up the whole book, and that's
Well, we
and
can leave it at that because I don't want to spoil too much of the series.
no, I can't.
I read.
I
was gonna say, well, I read the Abode and I loved it, and again, it was that feeling like you really do get that feeling in there. It's like that kind of oppressive environment, and it's just fun to see her go back and try to battle for freedom. We have let's see, CC Riders 777 says target reader is YA or young adult for anyone that doesn't know that. And but I can vouch for the fact it can be enjoyed by us boomers too. It definitely is a book that I love reading YA. It's one of my favorites to read, and but it's definitely one of my favorites about a lot of when you get some good YA is that it can apply to young adults and teens, right? And it's like, and it can also apply to just life in general. And that definitely is the Abode. I definitely feel that. You're getting all the shout outs, by the way. Andrea, again, a wonderful support for other people. Patricia has led such a cool and interesting life. I could honestly listen to her stories all day. I can as well, except for we have an hour limit on this show. So I can listen to her stories for exactly 1 hour.
Andrea, thank you so much. And what is your favorite? Oh, there's
and
my.
And then we have was it Sandy Sieber says,
yeah.
What is her favorite part in each of her books? Sandy, Sandy, I'm going to hire you to be on this show because I was like, you can ask all the questions because that was definitely one of mine. I was actually curious. I'd love to hear from authors. So go for it, Patricia. What was actually what was your favorite part in writing it?
I have to say, in the Abode, that my favorite part was when Molly, one of the she is the main character, and her good friend Phil from the first page find out what's really going on at the Abode, and then learn who they really are, their self-identity, which they don't know because they have lived as parentless children at this place with horrible people, sort of a Dickens, sort of Oliver Twisty thing. Please, can I have some more? No. So it was when they came to find out who they were, and then they could begin the fight for their freedom because they had power behind them.
Ironically, it's like that actually was actually my favorite part too. So it's like honestly, well, it kind of, which I think is great actually, because it's like usually my favorite part when writing it is not the reader's favorite part. It's like usually my favorite characters or the parts is like people didn't like those, so I'm like, oh, I was like, but that definitely was. I love that in books when you get that. I love the mystery of things, but I love that discovery aspect of like when the characters are discovering that. You wrote that so well, and so thanks, Sandy, for throwing that one out there. And so
I have to give the other person, Sandy Sieber is an author. He writes wonderful Pennsylvania history books. And the other person, CC Writers, that's Gail Siebert. She writes wonderful murder mysteries, really.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, excellent. Well, it's great to have. And again, if you're an author and you're tuning into this, this YouTube is connected with diabolicshrimp.com. It's a free site to join. We try to, I'm passionate about supporting other authors and try to do it for free or whatever low cost kind of things. I get people reviews and try to connect you with readers. So, and do things like this.
That's what I do with my newsletter. That's why I have the indie intros. Josh was just
I was like, Patricia has a fantastic newsletter, by the way, too. It's you could tell that you edited it's like the college alumni bit all that time because I was like, it's a fantastic, it's like one of the best newsletters I've ever seen. And
thank you, Josh.
CC Writers again. So, thanks, girlfriend. So everyone's getting the shout outs over here. So all right, well, let's get back to just the book a bit. Like, what kind of so like each individual characters just a bit like what kind of inspired some of that, and then I'll get you Slato. I see that down there. I was like, I'll get you up here in a second. But what kind of inspired some of these individual characters, and like why pirates? Like what was your passion in pirates, and why dragons? What was kind of your inspiration for like characters, pirates, and why did you land on dragons?
I remember that I wanted to write, and I still do, about good dragons. They breathe fire, but they don't tear you apart. They don't eat you. They're good guys and girls. So I wanted to write that, and that's how my dragons act. And what else did you want to know?
Well, I'm curious, like also pirates too. Like
Oh, pirates.
what was kind of your inspiration for getting pirates in there? Was it just like they're just cool, or
I don't know. I'm not a big pirate fan. Of course, in fact, reading about pirates for some background, the books I read for that are on my website, which is patriciaparker.com, by the way. I'm looking at them now. I found out that real pirates were worse than I thought.
yeah, there were monsters.
Oh my God, especially, well, today, of course, they still are, but the
Yeah.
Caribbean ones, the ones that Johnny Depp portrayed,
It's not the swashbuckling fun that we
cute.
all come to love.
They were horrible rapists and mere
Mm.
murderers and
Yeah.
thieves. And, ugh.
Isn't
So,
that the fun part of writing sometimes, though? You get to do some of that like research. I'm pretty sure I'm on like an FBI watch list, because when I was writing Pandora, I was looking at like cruise ships and sinking on like a public computer. I'm like where's the engine room on a cruise ship, and how do cruise ships sink? And like
oh,
it's
wow.
like I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna get a call from somebody. I learned a lot about the engineering of a cruise ship, though. It was kind
That's
of
what
terrifying how
happens.
easily
That's what
it was
happens.
to find.
There are some spiders in the second book that come up in a section called The Unseen. And I didn't know. Well, you asked me about pirates. I don't really know. Well, Phil had to escape from where she was at the Abode, and she had to get rescued out there in the wide world, as I call it. And that seemed the most. And then I don't really know how I made the leap from her getting rescued to being rescued by reformed pirates who were now good guys. I don't remember.
Well,
But anyway,
some of that is my favorite, though. Sometimes, like it's kind of what you were saying earlier. Like the book takes on a life of its own,
yeah,
and I love some of those surprise
yes,
things where it's like I'm writing about something I actually have no idea about. You know, it's like I did that for especially Nexus. I had to do a lot of research into robots, nanotechnology. I feel like an expert now, but I'm like, why am I writing about this when I'm like, I don't know anything about it? So, but oh well, so Slato, I love that name, Slato. Read
oh,
the
I don't know
Abode.
who that is. Thank you, whoever you are. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it says read the Abode overnight, was captured in its spell, and I'm hardly the YA target audience. And so thanks, Slato, for the shout out there. And so all right, so what would you say? What would you say is like the heart of your story? Of like, what would you love for readers to walk away with?
That courage when you're desperately afraid is still possible. And the characters in the Abode particularly were so brave. And the friendship among them was what saved the day. The links, the love and the friendship among the characters. Even the pirate who joined them accidentally learns a little bit about being a good human being, a lot about being a good human being, in fact. And there's a parrot too who's quite snarky.
I did love the parrot, actually. I was like, I remember I think I wrote that in my review too. I was like, parrot was one of my favorites.
Hidalgo is always making everybody get real.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
well, talking about the characters then, like so that was kind of the heart of the book. What's kind of your heart in the story? Like which of the characters, I guess, would you relate to personally the most? because we as writers will write characters, and sometimes we write a bit of ourselves in it, but sometimes we don't. So which one would you say is the most you? Probably the killer pirates, right?
That's right. Absolutely. I think Molly, who I think of as the main character, the protagonist, although Fell comes into at a very close second. And they're both my favorite characters, but so I'll say Molly and Fell because they're girls and they're young and they're female and they don't know their own strength and their own power and their own ability to make change. And I think for girls, that's absolutely essential to know, even these days, because, well, I came up when we were called, what did they call us? What was that word?
Well, we won't go. I think I know where you're going, but we won't necessarily go there. But
suddenly the word feminist became sort of a bad word.
Yeah, well, it was like harsh and it was mean.
That breaks my heart because I'm a feminist, and I think that we should get to a point in this world, or at least this country, where that doesn't even have to be a word, where there is more equality, and
just showing care to each other, right? It's like I was having this conversation with a gentleman that was, and I was a bit blunt with him. I was like, some of the strongest people in my life are female, and I like that we've taken strides in that direction, and I really do appreciate, books like yours that show that. I think it's still important that we're still showing this and still walking in the right direction, right? It's like with care for each other, right? And so I'm curious from you then. I know a lot has probably changed since you've been working on it. You worked on the Abode for so long. What changed over the course of you writing it? And are there any like story threads that got thrown away or that you decided to save for a later book?
I don't think so. Not so much. I have to say that Sam, who's a minor character in the first book, is the protagonist of the second book, but there are a lot of strong female characters with magical abilities in the second book. So anyway, but threads that I threw out, probably, but I don't remember anymore.
Yeah, I was like, well, I'm getting there with my first book. I was like, I've these days I've written so much in so many different routes that I was like, there were some for my first book. I was going in a whole different direction with it, and I actually literally can't remember what direction I was going in. It's probably one of my later books, and it's just in my subconscious now. So what? Let's talk about names really quick.
Sure.
The Abode, that one's fairly clear if you read the story, but but where did the name the Abode? Where did the name Wing Song come from? And then some of your character names, like was there anything like intentional in that, or was it just kind of like it just came to you and you just went with it?
Some of it was intentional. I wanted to have an international group of names, and I think I accomplished that, although a lot of them seem to be sort of based in Wales and Ireland. But and the name, one of the names that comes up early on, well, relatively early on, is Ewan, which I've never found, YWYN, which I've never found anywhere else. I couldn't even look it up. It didn't show up. So let's see. What else did you said names?
Yeah, well, I'm just curious, like, what was your inspiration for certain names? It's like
basically I would look up let's say the Greek word for something or the Welsh word for something, and I named my characters accordingly. Basically that was it. I wanted an international cast, although they're not there's no country. This is not set anywhere real. The whole Abode is set in in mostly inside the mists, and partly in the wide world. But that's not this world necessarily. Let's see.
Well, so I'm curious. Sorry, going forward here, because sadly we're we're running low on time. I was like,
Oh,
time
oh,
flies when
yeah,
you're having fun. I was like, I love getting to hear, like
I
Andrea
will.
said, I can listen to your story all day, but I'm curious, like you're about to round out the trilogy. Sorry, I cut you off, Patricia. You can go into it in a second,
No, no, it's okay. Fine.
you're about to round out the trilogy, and Wing Song.
Wing
Do you
Song.
yeah, Wing Song. I was like, but do you have plans for do you have plans for another series after that yet, or right now are you just focused on this one?
I'm focused on this one at my age.
It's never too late. You taught me that.
It's
So
never too late. And again, anyway, I'm focused on this one, and I have a plan for it. So I sort of do know where I'm going, but I'm not sure how I'm going to get there. Wing Song. Wing Song is something that dragons in my world do together. They fly and they make wing songs and they harmonize with each other. Their wings make the music and they harmonize with each other. And there can be 2 or hundreds flying together and making this beautiful harmony. And I love that, the harmony, the connection among them. Oh, and they also are telepathic.
well,
So
that's
it's a
just
lot of
beautiful,
fun.
and I think that captures some of that heart of what you were going for in the book as well, just in itself. And I was like, there's always so much more I want to get to in
Me
the
too.
Abode. If you haven't read it, definitely check it out. It's down in the description down below. We're just so short on time, Patricia. So I'm curious from you, for our readers and viewers, like, is there any way that we can support you? Again, Patricia's books are down in the description below. Her website's down there if you want to check out some of her inspiration for the books, if you want to learn more about them. Patricia's a wonderful person to get to talk to as well. So tell us, how can we support you? Again, Andrea, again, very supportive. The whole story sounds so beautiful and whimsical. It should be a Disney Plus series. Oh, that would be fun.
Had that fantasy, Andrea.
So, all right. So Patricia, like, what, how can we support you outside, buy your book or write reviews? What would be very supportive of you?
Those 2 things. And also, although I would wait to buy the Ice Dragon's Daughter, my son read it and found mistakes, so I'm trying to fix them. But meanwhile, I have a newsletter, and signing up for my mailing list, which you can do by going to my website and clicking Contact Me, that button, and that will take you to a little screen where you just put in your email, and if you want, you can send me a message there. And that way I'll be able to keep in touch with you. And I would love to do that. And just, send me a message if you want to. But for any author, purchases and reviews are so important to Amazon, who has an algorithm.
Yes,
And
it's the algorithm.
the algorithm. Anyway, so they won't show your book to many very often to anybody, unless you advertise a lot, which can be free depending on how many clicks you get. Somebody clicking your ad, or so advertising. So clicking on my ad if you see it, writing a review if you've read the book, but most important, of course, is reading the book. Buy the book, read the book, and it's also in Kindle Unlimited, so you can read it page by page at your own speed. I don't know if you know what that is, Kindle Unlimited, but if you pay a certain amount a month, you can read any book you want for free.
Yeah, it's like almost like a streaming service, and
Yeah.
I use KU, and so well, fantastic book, and you have an excellent newsletter too. So check it out. It's actually really interesting. If you like channels like this, it's similar to that in a sense. Like Patricia often will interview other authors as well on there. She just had me on there as well, and really cool newsletter too. So definitely jump in there. Well, Patricia, like I said, I'm just so sad. Like I said, time flies on this show when we get to talk books, especially wonderful books like The Abode. But thank you so much for sharing your life and sharing your book with us. So thanks for being on Diabolic Shrimp.
And thank you so much, Josh. And I can't tell you how many times I said I can't remember, but again, that is definitely age. And so
It's not age. I'm that point already. I'm like, I can't even remember what
I
I
can
ate for
remember.
breakfast this morning.
But you're just a wonderful person. And you
Oh.
guys watching this show, just keep in touch with Josh. He'll help you out. And he also gives to so many different charities. He calls himself
Patricia's required to
Ambassador.
say this while she's on the show. You can
Oh,
get on her newsletter and she'll tell you what she really thinks of me.
yeah,
That's where the pirate
great.
comes out. All right, Patricia, thanks for being on Diabolic.
Thank you so much, Josh. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right, hang out for a second, Patricia. For those of you watching, thank you so much for tuning in with us live. If you're watching this later, definitely hit those comments down below. I'd love to share those things with Patricia when you get them later. If you haven't had a chance, Diabolic Shrimp, like Patricia says, supports a lot of good causes, childhood disease research, cleaning up the ocean, those kinds of things are universally good things. So thank you so much for tuning in. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't had a chance. If you want to hear more about authors and about interesting people around the world. But this has been another Diabolic Shrimp. Have a good night.